All right, so let's continue our exploration into high adventure. This new the next Conan story, the Tower of the Elephant. Wow, I've been looking forward to this one here. Okay, so we're covering and commenting on the original Conan stories here, as written by Robert E. Howard way back in the 1930s. And as I said before, the timeline order I have chosen to go through, reading these tales one by one, is not so much the publication order, nor is it some sort of chronological order in the life of Conan the character, but rather the order in which these stories sprang out of the author's mind. The order in which Robert E. Howard conceived and penned these great stories. And that's why I have already covered, in this podcast series, I have already covered two stories that were not even published in Robert E. Howard's lifetime. The Frost Giant's Daughter and The God in the Bowl. Both stories that we know Robert wrote and submitted for publication prior to writing this one we're covering right now. And when I explained that, this criterion of mine, I received a comment in real life out there, not online, but face to face. I received a comment along these lines. Well, there's not exactly an original approach, is it? Yeah, the person sounded exactly like that. And, well, this is not exactly original, It's totally the same approach chosen by the editors of the Del Rey editions. That's what I was told. Basically, if you pick the first book of the 3-volume set collecting Robert E. Howard's stories, published by Ballantine Del Rey in 2002-2003, specifically The Coming of Conan of Cimmeria, if you jump to the index page, you will see that the stories do in fact appear in that exact order, regardless of whether they were published in Howard's lifetime or not. And in fact, I was told, if we do stick to that chronological order and assume that the Del Rey book editors got it right, then it seems I have already made a poo-poo. Behold, the stories on the index page of the Del Rey book are listed as follows: The Phoenix on the Sword, The Frost Giant's Daughter, The God in the Bowl, The Tower of the Elephant, this one, and then The Scarlet Citadel, etc., etc. Meaning that really, according to the very chronological order I chose to follow, I should have covered this story here before going through The Scarlet Citadel, which I already covered and commented on in the previous episode of this podcast. And to all of that, my reply is, you might be right, actually. See, okay, I am assuming that the Del Rey editors got it right and that they have information not available to yours truly, pointing to the Tower of the Elephant being written before the Scarlet Citadel, even though for some reason Robert E. Howard chose first to submit the Scarlet Citadel to Weird Tales magazine, while apparently keeping the finished manuscript for the Tower of the Elephant locked in a drawer for 2 solid months before submitting that one as well to Weird Tales. Because, and that's the information I have, Weird Tales published The Scarlet Citadel in January 1933 and then The Tower of the Elephant in March 1933. Okay. And who's to say that between January and March 1933, while the manuscript for The Tower of the Elephant was supposedly sitting in Robert E. Howard's desk drawer, who's to say that he never took it out again, never tweaked or polished a single sentence, never rewrote any parts of it until he was like 100% happy with it? Who's to say that? You see, at this point, we're just splitting hairs, really. Personally, I like to think that Howard was working on both stories at the same time, and that they were both being developed on a parallel course. I mean, they're both pretty long stories. I mean, this one here, The Tower of the Elephants, runs on 25 pages on the Fantasy Masterworks / Golan's Conan Chronicles Volume 1, which is the edition I own. And the Scarlet Citadel, which is on volume 2, let me see. Yeah, 42 pages, 42 pages. The answer is always 42. So yeah, pretty long stories which Howard may well have worked on simultaneously. Quick note, interestingly, upon closer inspection, it appears that the Fantasy Masterworks / Goldlang's edition, the 2 volumes published in 2000, which I actually own copies of here sitting on my shelves. The Goldlang's edition chose to adopt a timeline reflecting Conan's actual age in universe. What I mean is that the order in which the stories on these 2 volumes appear is the chronological order in which they happened in Conan's lifetime. Because the index on those 2 volumes slots itself perfectly, I noticed, onto the Conan timeline of adventures as conceived by none other than Robert Jordan in 1987. By no means the only Conan timeline in existence, but yeah. Why am I bringing this up now? Well, dear listener, the reason I bring this up now is that in Robert Jordan's chronology, as well as on the index page on the Goldlang's edition, this very story, The Tower of the Elephant, is the very first Robert E. Howard Conan adventure. Meaning that this is the very first adventure Conan had in universe among those originally penned by Robert E. Howard. This is the youngest Conan ever written by Robert E. Howard. I'm going to say practically a teenage Conan. He's just described as a youth on the page, but yeah, I'm going to say 15 years old. There. Anyway, so pedantic historical footnotes finally aside, 7 minutes it took me. What an intro. Welcome, dear listener, to the incoherent ramblings of an insane person online. I am but a humble chronicle keeper type guy here on my dusty tomes. Anyway, let's get into the story and the impact it must have had on the world when it first came out, shall we? Now, because it's actually quite interesting when you consider that The Phoenix on the Sword appeared on Weird Tales December 1932 issue, and only 1 month later The Scarlet Citadel was published in the January 1933 issue. 2 stories that offered pretty much the same product to readers. Now, I don't like the word product any more than the word content, really. Character. What's wrong with that? Character, the same character. Those very first 2 stories offer the same character to the public. Basically, this awesome character named Conan, king of a nation named Aquilonia, in a strange world where places had weird names like Cimmeria, Nemedia, Shem, Stygia. But not only that, because the second story, the Scarlet Citadel, contained direct references to characters and events to the previous story, The Phoenix on the Sword, published only 1 month prior. So continuity, world building, readers at the time must have been ecstatic. I mean, those who regularly purchased and read Weird Tales magazine must have thought, oh, cool, so this is this King Conan is like a regular thing now. I guess that from now on, Weird Tales will feature a new story of this King Conan dude and his associates every month. Yeah, why not? I'm up for a bit of that. Why, let's read on and see what troubles they got into now, these wacky guys from King Conan's entourage, or something along those lines. They must have thought, readers at the time. But so when in March 1933, regular readers picked up a copy of the latest Weird Tales issue, they must have thought, oh, great, another King Conan story. And no. What they found instead was a prequel of sorts, featuring, as I said, a teenage Conan in one of his earliest adventures. I guess, and this would make perfect sense, I guess that Howard must have figured, okay, so I have come up with this entire continent for this Conan dude to operate in, a Conantinent. Sorry, I couldn't help it. Continent complete with its own history and everything, the Hyborian age. But if I keep writing about Conan as a king of Aquilonia, busy ruling the kingdom and whatnot, I've basically written myself into a corner, because apart from occasional battles and skirmishes with neighboring countries, and I've already done that twice, there's no way for me to actually show what all those other nations look like on this this beautiful map here of the Hyborian age. I suppose Howard must have realized it was quickly running out of contrivances to place Conan on the battlefield. I mean, a king is only supposed to visit other nations on, I don't know, diplomatic visits or something. And not terribly exciting, is it? Can you imagine that? Conan and the delegation for the peace treaty somewhere. Conan and the international summit for renewable energies and stuff. I mean, I know the good old gimmick of writing a diplomatic invitation as a ploy trap type thing to actually kidnap Conan and place a puppet king on his throne could always be employed, I suppose. But really, how many times can you do that? I mean, and besides, the Scarlet Citadel already sort of hinges on that plot device already. So, sort of. So yeah, no. Solution: write about a young Conan in his early adventures, much like what he had done with the Frost Giant's daughter and the God in the Bowl, which left Robert E. Howard finally free to place the protagonist anywhere on the map of Hyboria. And for this particular adventure, he chose to place him in treacherous Zamora. That's right, yeah. And if you enjoy playing the game of spotting all the elements in Robert E. Howard's original text, which ultimately ended up in the Arnie movie, Conan the Barbarian, 1982, John Milius, but more interestingly, a screenplay by Oliver Stone. Well, then, if you enjoy spotting all those elements that ended up in that movie, well, then you will have noticed that quite a good chunk of that movie actually comes from this story here. Think about this. Conan winds up in Zamora, check. And he intends to scale a tower, check, which the locals prefer to avoid because some creepy culty shit takes place inside, check. And the reason Conan wants to scale that blasted tower in the first place is to steal a ginormous precious stone, check, guarded by a humongous beast, basically a king-size version of an existing venomous animal, check. But wait, there's more. I can't remember where that quote is from. Is it from a scary movie? Okay, so on his way there, Conan meets another clearly more experienced thief who, by a random coincidence, had cooked up the very same plan. So the thieves agree to team up together for this enterprise. Check. Okay, I think I have listed them all. Don't think I missed any. But yeah, in one way or another, almost every element in this story was modified for the film. Anyway, better not get ahead of myself. Let's start from the beginning. I'm not going to go through every single modification. So Conan is in Zamora, a dangerous country, Zamora. And more specifically, he's in the capital city of the same name. He's in the Mall of Zamora. M-A-U-L. He's not in a shopping mall. The mall is one of the most dangerous districts in the capital, one of those lawless places. Even the authorities, law enforcers, whatever, are reluctant to go in. Also because bribes. It's basically where all the thieves reside. And right now, the thieves in the mall are having a carnival. Yeah, that's right. So like a, what do you call it, parade. The thieves are having a blast, drinking, dancing in the streets, wearing funny hats and whatnot. They're celebrating the saint patron of thieves. Actually, there happens to be a good, sort of like divinity, a god, the god of thieves. There is a god of thieves here is mentioned. It's called Bel. So yeah, and they all swear by him here in Zamora. But the action at the beginning of the story takes place inside a tavern. Exactly, the old wretched hive of scum and villainy type, this kind of trope. 44 years later would reincarnate in Mos Eisley's cantina. And in a lot of other works of film and literature in between, Conan and Star Wars. Think of Rick's Bar American in Casablanca, patrons coming from all over the world, each wanting to either buy or sell something, including no questions asked passages, God knows where, as well as the sort of shady business people, smugglers and whatnot that would frequent such an establishment, trying to make a quick buck. Think of those pirate movies with Errol Flynn, Captain Blood, the Seahawk, Against All Flags. Not to mention the pirate story by definition, the pirate story. Treasure Island, Robert Louis Stevenson and its adaptations, plus the saloons in those Western dime novels, frontier literature. Or those space ports from Isaac Asimov's Foundation. Boy, am I getting lost. Yeah, well, you'd be used to my, going off on tangents by now, I hope. Well, anyway, so we're in that kind of a place, okay? A nameless tavern, and Conan is here, but we don't see him right away. There's a whole bunch of rogues here. Let me read you. Native rogues were the dominant element. Zamorians with daggers at their girdles and guile in their hearts. A giant Hyperborean renegade, a Shemitish counterfeiter, a bold-eyed Brythunian wench. God, this is a crap reading. Sitting on the knee of a tawny-haired gunderman, a wandering mercenary soldier, a deserter from some defeated army. See how this is the ideal setting for Robert E. Howard to start populating his stories with colorful people hailing from all corners of that continent he created. And this is where we meet exposition guy number 1. And this is a Kothian, fella from Koth. Not a savory character, to be sure. He is basically a human trafficker. That's his business. And as Robert says here, he's explaining his business to Zamorians, who were born with more knowledge of the art than he could ever attain. But the important part comes now, because in describing one of his intended victims, he goes, you should see this Brythunian woman. I know lords in Shem who would trade the secret of the Elephant Tower for her. And it's this particular nugget that attracts the attention of Conan. He literally enters the scene here, as he's a character that hasn't yet been described in the bunch of Mos Eisley's Cantina patrons. Here Conan is described as a tall, strongly made youth whose cheap tunic could not conceal the hard, rangy lines of his powerful frame, the broad, heavy shoulders, the massive chest, lean waist, and heavy arms. His skin was brown from outland suns, his eyes blue and smouldering. A shock of tousled black hair crowned his broad forehead. From his girdle hung a sword in a worn leather scabbard. How about that? This is it. This is the description of Conan as he was in his youth, barely of drinking age. Why would lords of Shem know the secret of the Elephant Tower? Anyway, we'll get to that later. Anyway, so this Kothian guy, he can't guess Conan's nationality. I mean, everyone knew where the Hyperborean guy was from, but no one has seen a Cimmerian before. I guess Cimmerians don't travel as much, it's implied. Sorry. Anyway, so Conan goes, pardon me, sir, I couldn't help overhear you mention this Tower of the Elephant. Okay, this is probably a good time to inform you that these dialogues are slightly paraphrased. All right. He goes, yeah. So yeah, what's the deal with this Tower of the Elephant? What's this so-called secret? So the Kothian starts insulting Conan right from the get-go. What are you, stupid? Okay, A, don't interrupt me. I'm telling a story. And B, any fool knows that even my cat, any fool knows that Yara the priest dwells there with the great jewel men call the elephant's heart. That is the secret of his magic. You see, what's the matter? You never read the gossip tabloids, huh? I told you this exposition guy. This is exposition guy number one. And but Conan has more questions, So he goes, yeah, but I mean, I've seen that tower up there on the hill. It's surrounded by this wall, which I could totally climb, and it looks like there are no guards inside. So why has no one ever thought of stealing that blasted jewel? You've got to consider Conan is real young here and unexperienced, because in the latter part of his career, he wouldn't need anyone to explain to him that surely something other than human guards must be guarding the garden. Oh God, guards guarding the garden. Oh, guards guarding the garden. Okay, right. Never mind. All right. So anyway, so the garden around the tower, within the wall perimeter. In this case, it's lions. I mean, we will later find out. So no sorcery, witchcraft, nothing supernatural. Just your run-of-the-mill common or garden variety lion, literally garden variety. Oh, and there are also guards on the ground floor of this tower, while the jewel is on the top floor. Proceeds to explain this well-informed Kothian human trafficker, while adding a few more insults in the mix for good measure. But Conan won't give up. He goes, yeah, but one could still enter the building from above, unseen by the ground floor security. And we know that this enter from the top technique will become Conan's sort of like trademark, signature modus operandi later in life. Sort of like Ethan, what's his name? Tom Cruise's character. Ethan Hunt, from Mission Impossible. We know that this will become Conan's preferred method because we have already read a Conan breaking and entering adventure set in the future. The God in the Bowl, remember? Anyway, at this point, the Kothian just loses it. Listen to him. Ha, ha, ha. The barbarian is an eagle, apparently. He would fly to the jeweled rim of the tower, which is only 100... I want to make him, like, real cocky. Which is only 150 feet above the earth, with rounded sides slicker than polished glass. Ha, ha. Everybody laugh with me. Ha, ha. Everybody along with me. Ha, 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 ha. Okay. Because that's how bullies operate, isn't it? A humiliation isn't complete if it's not public, To which Conan goes, yeah, well, where there's a will, there's a way, you know what I mean? As long as one is not a chicken about it. Now that's a nice comeback, which enrages the Kothian, who is about to die without even a name to his name. Because he hasn't got a name, just the Kothian human trafficker, and he starts pushing Conan. How dare you call me a chicken? And Conan is like, keep your hands to yourself, mate, or else, what are you gonna do about it? I said, don't touch me. Everyone starts egging them, on that fight. It turns into a proper brawl, which knocks off the one candle light in the room there on a barrel, just like you would expect. So the fight goes on in the dark, and another candle is finally found and lit. And guess what? Conan is gone and the Kothian is dead. Because Conan, it has been hinted in previous stories, has his senses attuned, sort of like those of an animal, so he can sense stuff in the dark, if not actually see. And the Kothian found out the hard way. Oh well, I guess I guess the what was it? The Brythunian woman will never know how close she came to being kidnapped and sold to some count from Ophir for 300 silver pieces. It was all there on the text I didn't mention. The world is a better place now, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, we move on to the second part of the story, where all that setup is about to pay off. You know, Conan's plan is about to spring into action, and our beloved loincloth makes its appearance. You know, that's right. It's that kind of an adventure, a loincloth adventure. I remember I had this drinking game every time the loincloth was mentioned, probably because I'd never heard the term before. So if that garment was mentioned in the story, I'd have a shot, which of course improved my mood as I read on. Anyway, yes, so it's that kind of a story because Conan is walking the streets of the mall, having discarded the cheap tunic he was wearing, all torn as it was from the brawl. So he's walking around at night, all naked except for the loincloth and a pair of sandals, I like to think. Anyway, he's comfortable just wearing that. You know, he doesn't go around stealing clothes from Bill Paxton, you know, unlike Terminator. Let's say he's more ethical than Terminator. Schwarzenegger characters go. But yeah, there he goes, you know, aimed for the temple district, the area where all places of worship are. Shrine of Zamora's myriad strange gods. And this is where we get a bit of theology from Conan. Because all of those sophisticated religions he keeps encountering in his adventures with all sorts of complicated rituals are simply not his cup of tea. Here, let me read you this. His gods were simple and understandable. Crom was their chief, and he lived on a great mountain whence he sent forth dooms and death. It was useless to call on Crom because he was a gloomy, savage god, and he hated weaklings. But he gave a man courage at birth and the will and might to kill his enemies, which, in the Cimmerian's mind, was all any god should be expected to do. See, I knew I was going to forget elements, themes from this story that ended up in the 1982 movie, because this was explained in the film, both in the prologue and in Conan's discussions with Subotai, you will remember. Anyway, so wandering around the temple area, he finally gets face to face with the titular Tower of the Elephant. At this stage of his life, Conan has never seen an actual elephant, has only heard of them. And in this world, we understand elephants live way out east, you know, in a nation called Hyrcania. There are no elephants in Zamora, all the more reasons why no one seems to know why the tower is named after one. I mean, there's this evil wizard, because there has to be an evil wizard, the guy called Yara, who apparently has this gem called the Heart of the Elephant. Okay, we know that much from exposition guy number 1. And supposedly the stone grants Yara the power to turn people into unnatural beasts like huge spiders, toads, and so on. That's how Yara rolls. We also get a description of the tower. It was round, a slim, perfect cylinder, 150 feet in height, and its rim glittered in the starlight with the great jewels which crusted it. 2 walls encircle it, and this exotic sort of garden lies within the inner wall. So, yeah, you can imagine Conan is a bit cautious at this point, and rightly so, because he hears someone pacing just on the other side of the outer wall, and then silence. What's going on here? So he climbs the wall and then leaps down on the outer courtyard, only to stumble across a dead guy. A guard actually, this is a royal guard. See, earlier on it was mentioned that the king of Zamora, though officially the ruler of the country on paper, is actually scared shitless of this evil wizard this Yara guy, which you might remember is a similar political situation of Ophir, the kingdom of Ophir. You remember from the Scarlet Citadel, where the wizard Tsothalanti is really in charge, not the nominal king on paper. So anyway, I'm saying this because here the dead guy wears the uniform of the Zamoran Royal Guards, which means that this Yara guy, through his power of intimidation, doesn't even have to pay for his own guards. He gets them free of charge from the king of Zamora, I guess. And yet somehow they're all bound by the spell, because they all... I'm assuming you've read this story, right? That's why you're here, just to hear it commented. I don't know why you're here. What I mean is, okay, you won't mind if I give you a little spoiler here. I mean, if you've read it, it's not a spoiler. That at the end they all die when Conan kills Yara. The spell ends, the tower crumbles. I get that because it was built with magic, sorcery, but the guards also die. Anyway, so all right. Lost my train of thought. Well, all right. Anyway, there's no time for any of those political / magical considerations because someone else enters the scene. Busy night, huh? Okay, so it's that other, more experienced thief, who just happens to be there because he's also planning to steal the heart of the elephant. Been planning for months, actually. What are the odds, right? This guy is called Taurus, exposition guy number 2, in a way. The guy is called Taurus. Love the name. Also known as the Prince of Thieves, professional burglar from Numidia. Conan is aware of him. It's a small world after all, and in the community of thieves, it's a small network, international network. So Taurus goes, all right, tell you what, I admire your gull. Let's do this thing together, huh? Oh, the guard? Yeah, that was me. That was me. I'm afraid I killed the guard. Yeah. What are you gonna do? He heard me, so I had to casually strangle him. Why didn't I hide the body in the bushes? Why, novice? You do ask a lot of questions. All right, I left the body there on the footpath for shock value. So the new guards are bound to see him, so they'll start shouting the alarm, running around like a bunch of idiots, and that will give us all the time to escape. See, I'm smart. I think things through. This is what he explains to Conan. So he says, okay, so you want to steal the jewel, I want to steal the jewel. Let's team up for this enterprise. So it's decided. The two will proceed to cross the outer yard, to the inner wall, because there will be no guards for a while. And then it's off to the top of the tower. Taurus's plan is also to scale the tower from the outside, coincidentally. He's got it all planned out, you see, unlike Conan, who decided to go for the jewel on the spur of the moment. So he plans to reach the top of the tower, find Yara, and strangle him. That's his thing. He strangles people. But yeah, that's the plan in a nutshell. What could possibly go wrong, right? So 1, 2, 3, and hop! Taurus leaps up, catches the wall, and he's on the other side. Because he's chubby but real agile, Let me read you the quote. The man's suppleness was amazing considering his bulk. There, I think of him as a sort of like a John Belushi type, If you see those somersaults he did in the Blues Brothers, the church scene, that was him. Or that other sketch he did in Saturday Night Live. I don't know if you've ever seen it. It's a fake donut commercial. Hilarious. Anyway, yes, sure, why not? Taurus could look like John Belushi in my mind. Yeah, Taurus is John Belushi. Okay, a taller John Belushi. So anyway, they're inside now, moving like guerrilla commando type guys. Taurus even has a spyglass, and they're thinking, oh well, I suppose we'll be all right as long as there aren't any lions. And guess what? Lions. That's right. They can be seen, you see. Lions can be seen. shining eyes in the middle of those bits of shrubbery down there, exactly as you would expect it. That's the non-human type of guard stalking in the inner garden, and now we know why the tower's ground floor has all its doors locked, and you don't see guards coming in and out of the tower, which kind of makes sense, but it makes you wonder. How does that changing of the guards actually take place? I mean, it better be timed to take place right after feeding time, because otherwise things could go horribly wrong. So lions, hey? Do they also come from Hyrcania, like the elephants anyway? All things African continent are in Hyrcania? Well, we'll have to keep reading to find out. Anyway, Taurus has a secret weapon for the big cats. He's got this lethal yellow powder he blows from a tube. Poof! And they all drop dead. At least 5 of them. 5 of them. And yes, you will be pleased to know that this powder also is made from the black lotus, whose blossoms wave in the lost jungles of Kitai, where only the yellow-skulled priests of Yun dwell. Those blossoms strike dead any who smell of them. Okay, so you better be careful then. But see how many uses there are for this lotus flower, huh? We learned in the Scarlet Citadel that in Stygia they distill the juice from the purple variety, which of course grows in the ghost-haunted swamps of southern Stygia, and it has the power of paralyzing you even though you're still conscious. But there's another lotus juice that's drunk as an alternative to wine. I imagine that the processes for making these two types of lotus juices must be quite different. Otherwise, locust parties, I would stay away from it, you know what I mean? That's, do you want to come to the lotus party? No, man, I'll sit this one out. Sorry, mate. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, yet another byproduct of black lotus is supposedly used as a recreational drug in the 1982 Conan the Barbarian movie. You remember this dodgy market vendor who sells some lotus drug type thing to Conan and Subotai. Anyway, so no real lions were harmed in the writing of this scene. And this is where Taurus informs us that that was the power he had. Yes, the better proceed with caution from now on, because he can't. He's run out of powder. That was all the power he had. So right now he can't whack the guards the same way. He cannot knock them out or kill them with the lotus powder because it's gone. It's fresh out. Still. Let's hope we take care of all the lions, am I right? And sure enough, just as Taurus is swinging the rope with the obligatory, hook on one end of it, roar! Yeah, actually, no, there's no roar, actually, because let me read you the quote. The death that was upon them made no sound. It's only, Conan's instinct that alerts him of the danger. And really, Taurus, you should have known better, done your research, your homework. Who buys 5 lions? I mean, certainly not 4 lions. This is no Christopher Morris movie. Am I right? But 5, that's 5 lions. That's an incomplete set. Taurus, 6 lions. Everybody knows that any evil wizard worth his salt buys 6 lions to patrol his exotic gardens. 6. Half a dozen, if you prefer. Anyway, so not to worry. I mean, not to worry for these 2 thieves, because Conan has grabbed his sword and split the lion's skull into the lion's skull. So if you want to worry about anyone, worry about the lion. Actually, no, it's too late now. In the words of Twisted Sister, you can't hear the lion when he stalks his prey. It's the nature of the beast and all that. So stop wondering why the late Simba made no sound. That's why. That's how, that's his modus operandi. Yeah, MO. Time to get on with it anyway. With a rope and the hook. swing and up and above, all the way to the jewel-encrusted top of the tower, up on that rope. Fun fact, did you know that a rope can be made stronger by dipping it into the deadly wine of the upas tree? Of course, needless to say, the material has to be strong to begin with. So if the rope is made by weaving the tresses of dead women taken from their tombs at midnight, then Bob's your uncle. Or so tells us Taurus. Let that sink in. That's the extent to which Taurus goes to make sure his ropes bear his weight. And when they finally reach the rooftop, right, they find out it is indeed a treasure in and of itself, encrusted with diamonds, rubies, emeralds, sapphires, turquoises, moonstones, set thick as stars in the shimmering silver. At which point Conan, who has probably never seen so many riches in his life, he just goes, "Whoa, man! Let's just grab this shit and make out with these, huh?" But no, Taurus is all like, nah, mate, eyes on the prize, eyes on the prize, mate, the heart of the elephant, remember? Eyes of the tiger, heart of the elephant, that's what we are here for, everything else can wait. And without further ado, he heads to the chamber in the middle of this rooftop and casually just opens the door. It's not even locked, because no one would expect a burglar to enter via the terrace. But then Taurus says something that makes us and Conan sort of go, wait a minute. No, because, he says, hey, Conan, before we get down to business, yeah, have a look down over the rim of this terrace and see if you spot any guards moving about, huh? To which Conan thinks, wait a minute, is this guy planning to lock the door behind me and lock me out here like an idiot? But still, he does go and take a look, and while sure enough, at the same time, as Conan is out there, having look-see, Taurus closes the door behind him. But whether he did plan on stiffing Conan or not, we will never know, because if you read the story, you know that this chamber is the last place Taurus ever sets foot in, because we hear a dreadful scream. Conan rushes in, and there he is, Taurus, hands clawed at his throat, his lips slobbered and gurgled, while in the background Conan spotted a weird shape. I'll write in here the text, weird shape sliding across the floor. Really, this is something like right out of The Thing, John Carpenter, which I think also came out in 1982. And after a couple of convulsions, Taurus is dead. Goodbye, Taurus. We hardly knew you. And the only evidence of violence is these three dark, smelly wounds, which Robert E. Howard describes as if 3 nails had been driven through the base of his neck. So now he looks around, Conan, and he finds himself in a treasure room. You know the trope, chests bursting with gold, jewels, you name it, and he has no time to figure out the combined value of all these artifacts, because the thing returns, the thing that killed Taurus, and it's this giant black spider, the size of a pig, fangs dripping venom, which we know from these Robert E. Howard stories this venom is always scalding hot. You see the steam rising from it, and even if it's not injected, just the touch of it can burn you, as Conan learns here, possibly for the first time, huh? And there it is, staring at him with his evil red eyes. Well, howdy do. I have this vague memory of a spider popping up and greeting other characters with a howdy do. I think it's from The Corpse Bride, Tim Burton. Anyway, so Conan manages unceremoniously to amputate one of his hairy legs. So the monster crawls up to the ceiling, where of course he's got this huge cobweb to hang from, and it starts looking at him evilly. It starts spitting more of that sticky stuff, thick as ropes. Conan has to dodge that real quick, and in fact, one of those cobwebs does coil itself around one of Conan's ankles, at which point he has to think real fast and grabs one of those chests and hurls it hurls it at the spider. Splat! Oh, that does the trick. Gross slime all over the place, but let the cleaning staff worry about that. I guess I killed giant venomous spiders now. Yeah, can you imagine if this had been written by those people populating writers' rooms these days, in ruining franchises and intellectual properties in Hollywood, Netflix, HBO, whatever. Those writers with their snarky, ironic meta comments, Conan would be saying stuff like, "Oh, well, I guess I'm the kind of guy who kills spiders now." Oh, hey, remember that summer when I killed giant spiders? It's like, no. Okay, dear listener, I am talking to you from 2025. I'm sorry, apologize for the crap I just said. But hopefully you are listening from an era where creators of this kind of literature have a bit more respect. Hopefully, I don't know. Anyway, so Conan can finally reach the other door at the other end of the room after spending some time disentangling himself. The whole room is a mess with cobwebs everywhere. Yuck. But yeah, eventually he opens the door, which sure enough leads to the stairs of the lower floor, where we guess the heart of the elephant might be kept, if it exists. So he goes down these stairs and finds himself facing an ivory door this time, encrusted with red jewels, because of course, with wisps of smoke drifting lazily from beneath the door and bearing a strange exotic scent. Whoever is behind that door must be puffing something wacky, if you know what I mean. And Conan enters the room boudoir, I want to call it, because it comes with thick rugs, sofas, cushions, an exotic brazier with incense burning, golden domed ceiling, walls made of jade. I mean, imagine that. Plus, it's got the whole floor made of ivory. The door leading to the boudoir is also entirely made of ivory. And how do you make a whole door out of ivory, let alone a floor? I guess it must be a whole technique of fitting together lots of small planks of ivory, unless your raw material is an elephant tusk that was as large as the tusk itself, as large as an elevator shaft. I don't know why, that's the first thing that came to my mind, but there you go. Anyway, so the ivory theme is important here for obvious reasons, and right in the middle of the room sits on a marble sort of pedestal, some sort of image, I guess statue or idol. We don't know exactly how large, the text doesn't say, we imagine human size, and its body does seem human, if a bit green, but the head is way too large, and it's the stuff of nightmares, Conan thinks. But we have to remember, he's never seen an elephant, not yet, in this phase of his life. He's only ever heard them described by travelers from Shem, if you must know. But he guesses, oh, so that's what an elephant's head looks like. Ah. All right, then, I suppose the gem must be inside this statue type thing. Surely they don't call it the elephant's heart for nothing, huh? But it's at this point that the quote-unquote statue opens its eyes. It's alive, and it's not clear why it's opened its eyes, because Conan immediately understands that he's blind, this elephant dude. Notice how he's accepting this new information, cool as a cucumber, while a civilized man would have doubted his own sanity. This is one of hundreds of Robert E. Howard's little references to Conan being better at everything because uncorrupted by civilization and so on. His senses are more attuned, his reflexes sharper, etc., etc. So Conan deduces this elephant dude is blind and trapped in this chamber. He figures it out from what the fella is saying because he can speak more or less intelligibly, and he's saying, "Who goes there? Is that you, Yara? Come to torment me again? Me, poor Yagkosha? Yagkosha." That's his name. So we know a lot already of what's going on just by this brief exposition. Yagkosha qualifies as exposition guy number 3. We know that the dude with human limbs, Yakosha, quasi-human limbs, head of an elephant. Okay, I'm really going out of my way here not to say the elephant man. Yeah, okay. He's got human limbs, the head of an elephant, and we know that his name is Yakosha. We know he's been captive in that chamber for ages, tortured on a regular basis by this Yara guy. Not clear why yet. We know he's blind, and we sort of figure that he's not a threat to Conan, and so does Conan himself. Conan realizes this Yakosha is not a threat to me, he thinks. In a passage, dear listener, that confirms, okay, for those saying that Conan the Barbarian is not a compassionate dude, here's the passage, I want to read it to you. And suddenly all fear and repulsion went from him, to be replaced by a great pity. What this monster was, Conan could not know, but the evidence of its sufferings were so terrible and pathetic that a strange aching sadness came over the Cimmerian. He knew not why. He only felt that he was looking upon a cosmic tragedy, and he shrank with shame, as if the guilt of a whole race were laid upon him. There, I had to read it in its entirety, so we put a stop to all that nonsense about Conan being a cardboard, sort of two-dimensional character. Robert E. Howard wanted to show us here that this character was perfectly capable of having those emotions. Perhaps, I don't know, to balance with the other, personality traits, where, the theology, where Conan worships a god who hates weaklings and so on. See, but this thing about hating weaklings isn't exactly an attitude shared by Conan, and that he's capable of pity and sadness at the state of this Yakosha dude kind of serves as evidence of that. And okay, this is just to reiterate a teenage Conan. Okay, he hasn't yet attained that level of sort of like cynicism, if you like, but still. So anyway, so Yakosha starts running his hands across Conan's face and limbs, to have a better idea who he's dealing with. Not his trunk, for some reason. And that's when he realizes that Conan's features are not from around here. In fact, he sort of figures out where Conan is from, but he also must be doing some sort of like Vulcan mind meld with him, because he figures things out that Conan doesn't even tell him. Yes, he tells him of the spider he squashed upstairs right after the vermin had killed Taurus, the prince of thieves, but somehow Yakosha also finds out about the dude Conan whacked in the tavern brawl earlier on, so he must have clairvoyant powers or something. But here we move on to a hugely important piece of world building, because Yakosha tells us a bit about himself. He goes, "Look, I look weird, but not because I'm a demigod or a demon or whatever. It's because I'm from a different planet. You see, where life takes different forms. See, I've been around for a long time, and I spent quite a big chunk of my life here on Earth. Came from the planet Yag. Yeah, that's right. Which planet Yag, which we've heard before, in the name Yag, planet Yag, we associate with not so pleasant stuff, because if you remember back in the Scarlet Citadel, the sorcerer Pelias, who knows? Shall I pronounce it Latin? Because it looks like an ancient Roman Latin name, Pelias, not Pelias. Anyway, the sorcerer Pelias, imprisoned in that dungeon, was being kept sedated in a sort of comatose state by an evil sentient plant wrapped all around him, a plant called Yothga, with roots, and I quote here, set in hell. And well, guess what? Pelias, I want to call him Pelias, later explained that this Yothga plant came from the planet Yag, or precisely, thank Chrome for bookmarks, the seeds drifted down through the black cosmos from Yag the Accursed and found fertile field only in the maggot-writhing corruption that seethes on the floor of hell. So yeah, there's that. And also, interestingly, a reminder that in pre-Tolkien fantasy, yes, yeah, the cat clearly agrees with that. A reminder that in pre-Tolkien fantasy literature, you know, the fantasy, the per se, and the, I don't know, cosmic horror, where those two genres were not like two completely separate genres. There was overlap. And the two could well coexist in the same story, like this one. Elements like aliens being worshipped as gods in ancient times, evil seeds traveling across the cosmos. Okay, perhaps not exactly cosmic horror, more like sci-fi horror, but yeah, because the seed of an evil plant traveling across space and germinating on Earth, I mean, that's straight up the Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you know, everyone's favorite version being the one with Donald Pleasance, you know. What was it, Jessica Harper, is it? In the 70s, anyway. I learned that there's a distinction between the two, you know, the cosmic horror and the sci-fi horror from this YouTube channel, the Horror Scriptorium, really cool channel. And here's the world building I was telling you about, because in this mythos, Yag-Kosha and company, that's right, there were quite a few of those creatures, so we can also infer that Yag-Kosha is the last of his kind, really. And they traveled across space with wings. They fly now! They fly now! Oh, damn, I'm sorry. I must have caught the smug Hollywood writer bug. So now these ironic sitcom-like lines, you know, like, like, duh. They just keep coming out randomly. I'm sorry. It's my fault for mentioning those idiots in the first place. Those Hollywood writers. Somehow they have returned. If you caught all those references, yeah, I know. Anyway, so space travel is envisioned by fantasy writers in the 1930s. Never mind the vacuum of space, lack of breathable air, not to mention the ludicrous speed, required to cover distances of several light years. No. We traveled across the cosmos with wings. Suspend your disbelief, dear listener, because Yag-Kosha came from planet Yag. Sorry, I can't help it, but that does sound a bit like Mork coming from planet Orc, you know, nanu. Anyway, Yag-Kosha and his race came to Earth on wings, which then withered, so all those people, that race, could never make the journey back. And they probably wouldn't have if they had wanted to, because they had been ostracized, alienated, no pun intended, by the cruel tyrants of Yag. So they came here to stay. They settled in an unspecified region in the east, right in the middle of the jungle, because of course. So through the ages, this race witnessed the evolution of humans from the ape, the building of the shining cities of Valusia, Camellia, Comoria, the oceans rise and then engulf Atlantis and Lemuria and the isles of the Picts. They saw the survivors of Pictum and Atlantis build their Stone Age empires and go down to ruin, locked in bloody wars. They saw, I'm quoting almost verbatim here, they saw the Picts sink into abysmal savagery, the Atlanteans into apedom again. New savages drift southward in conquering waves from the Arctic Circle to build a new civilization with new kingdoms called Nemedia and Koth and Aquilonia and their sisters. They saw humans rise under a new name from the jungles of the apes that had been Atlanteans. And then the descendants of the Lemurians who had survived the cataclysm rise again through savagery and ride westward as Hyrcanians. Okay, so now Hyrcania has an origin story from Lemuria. And that's where elephants are from, so there, in case you needed a reminder. And then they saw this race of devils, this here, Zamora, race of devils, survivors of the ancient civilization that was before Atlantis sank, come once more into culture and power, this accursed kingdom of Zamora. So quite a lot of world building here, huh? This race saw quite a few things, from their remote location in the jungle. But we already know they have this sort of clairvoyant power thingy, so there you go. That's how they figured it out. They probably didn't even need to travel to keep abreast of the news. Yakosha himself was worshipped out there in Kitai, which is kind of like a stand-in for Eastern Asia. It was worshipped as a god. There you go, the trope of an alien being worshipped as a god. Kitai! Look at this. Where the grey apes dance to the pipes of priests in yellow. Make of that what you will. So there he was, Yakosha, minding his own business in the jungle of Kitai, accepting offerings from the natives. What's this, pineapple? Love it. When out of the blue, here pops along the evil wizard Yara, who wasn't even a full-fledged wizard yet. He sought knowledge of the supernatural powers, magic and whatnot, which Yakosha naively imparted to him. But he kept wanting more and more, impatiently. He kept going, come on, Yag, get to the naughty bits, the evil lore to enslave kings and glut my fiendish ambitions. Until one day, Yara plied him with wine, you think? I don't know. No, yeah, he plied Yakosha with guile, not wine. The guile gotten among the dusky tombs of dark Stygia. We don't actually know if any psychotropic substance was used, but yeah, the short version is he got Yakosha to reveal one of his secrets, which he then, this Yara guy, he then used that secret to enslave the elephant dude and bring him all the way to Zamora, of all places. And for the last 300 years, he's been kept captive in this tower, which Yara forced Yakosha to build in one night, because magic. And no wonder legends abound about this tower. I mean, if people saw it spring up overnight, built by magic. So now you know everything about not only about the Hyborian Age continent, but also about this tower and all its inhabitants. So good old Yakosha has a plan. He says, okay, but revenge is mine now. If it's the last thing I do, and it will be the last thing I do, actually. Good job that you're here, Cimmerian. You're going to help me. You're going to help me. In fact, tell you what. Watch this trick. It's called the Sorcery of the Blood and the Jewel. It's kind of a self-explanatory name, if not the catchiest I could come up with. But all you have to do is this. You grab that gem you will find on yonder altar, then cut out my heart, yeah, that's right, with that sword that I know you have. Then squeeze it so that the blood will flow over the red stone. Then you have to go down in Yara's HQ, throw the gem at him and say literally, Yakosha gives you a last gift and a last enchantment. At which point, my dear Cimmerian, you'd better run for your life. So you got all that, yeah? See, Conan is a bit conflicted about this. I mean, taking Yakosha's life and all, poor bloke. But I'm guessing that part of him is also looking forward to the firework factory that will come with this awesome sorcery thing. Remember, Conan is still young at this point and hasn't yet learned to be diffident of any type of sorcery, be it from friend or foe. So he carries out the instructions, slash, ouch, and Yakosha, yeah, he's dead, R.I.P. He grabs the stone, which is, you've guessed it, the heart of the elephant. So picture this. He squeezes the poor guy's heart over the stone, which then absorbs the blood, soaks the blood like a sponge. And then some strange colorations change inside the heart of the elephant, signifying that the blood thing literally now has magical, the bloody thing now has magical powers, bloody thing, literally the bloody thing. Now, I'm describing all that scene because I swear I must have seen a similar scene in a movie. And I don't know if it's one of those B movies, like the Quatermain movies, with Richard Chamberlain, Canon films. Was it in there? So for the life of me, I can't think of what film I've seen this bit in. A few drops of blood on a gem, huge gem, and the blood gets soaked inside, and suddenly some weird shit takes place inside the gem, like it gets all cloudy and magical. Damn, I'm tortured. Where did I see that? Can you help? I mean, closest thing I can think of is Thinner, the Stephen King novel. The drop of blood turning an object into something sinister. Except it's a pie in Thinner, not a gem. Anyway, so Conan now has his magical amulet talisman kind of thing, and he goes down the silver stairs, and get this, he closes the door to Yaga's chamber, which is an ivory door, gets to the lower floor, and finds himself facing the door of Yara's chamber, which is an ebony door. Huh? Ivory, ebony. Okay, I will spare you my rendition of the song. So he opens the door and calls him, Yara! Kind of like, Stella! Yara wakes up, and you can tell he's a bit stoned from smoking a bit of the old yellow lotus. Lotus has, I told you, so many uses in this universe, depending on the variety, from poison to recreational drug to recreational wine, as opposed to academic wine. Yellow, black, purple. It all depends on which one you use, I suppose. And so Yara is stoned, has been puffing at the old wacky tobacco, and he rubs his eyes and goes, "Oh, who are you, dog? What do you want?" Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm like kind of like a delivery boy, if you will. I've been told to give you this and to say that Yag Kosha gives a last gift and a last enchantment. I don't know. Those were his exact words, and there, catch this. Wow, what's happening to you? Because in the meantime, Yara, obviously falls victim of the spell, and the evil wizard Yara begins to shrink smaller and smaller. Oh no, what's happening to me indeed? Yeah, because his voice gets squeaky as well, and he's running around around the room like an idiot with his tiny legs. But some weird magnetic force is pulling him toward the stone. He's the size of an insect at this point, and he ends up on top of the gem, and then literally sinks into it, and suddenly the interior of the heart of the elephant comes clear again, because it was all cloudy because of the bloody the blood magic, you see, and now it's clear again. So Conan can see Yara inside. Hello, how are you? And he can also see that he's being chased by a restored Yankosha, young again, no longer blind and disheveled. And oh boy, you're going to pay now, Yara boy. And then, like the bursting of a bubble, I'm reading there from a text, like the bursting of a bubble, the great jewel vanished in a rainbow burst of iridescent gleams, and the ebony tabletop lay bare and deserted. So, so Conan, runs downstairs at this point because he was told rather, and I know what you're thinking, but surely that's the soldiers' quarter on the ground floor. But no, because they're all dead. They died with the spell, and the tower is about to crumble as well. And the door to the garden is open. So he just runs for his life. The promise was kept. The way is clear, to freedom through the garden. And as he's finally out in the street, he turns back, and let me read you this final passage. As he looked, he saw the gleaming tower sway again against the crimson dawn. Its jewel-crusted rim sparkling in the growing light, and crash into shining shards. I told you the tower crumbles at this point. So it was all built by magic, so magic is no more. So there, Whew, this is one of those stories where the hero walks out empty-handed, obviously, but has done a good deed, so that's all right, and the status quo is restored. He'll have to keep on, keep on working, traveling, burglarizing, more adventures. That's it. That's what you get when the status quo is restored. So yeah, as I said, the story had a bit of an afterlife, because after appearing on Weird Tales in March 1933, the publishing house Arkham House printed it in a collection titled Skullface and Others in 1946. This was a book collecting various Conan and non-Conan stories by Robert E. Howard. I don't know much about this particular book. It has a foreword by H.P. Lovecraft. But more interestingly, with regard to Conan lore, this story was then repackaged by L. Sprague de Camp in a Gnome Press hardcover book, the Gnome Press books. This one was called The Coming of Conan, published in 1953. That's the one that contains this story, The Tower of the Elephant. These are the famous, Gnome Press collections of Conan stories, which appeared with some of de Camp's rewrites. And then 14 years later came the Lancer paperback collections. Those 12 books filled with Conan stories, edited by L. Sprague de Camp and Lynn Carter. The very first of these 12 books, titled simply Conan, featured The Tower of the Elephant. It was published in 1967, and later reissued by Ace after Lancer went bust, from what I understand. Then you have a whole bunch of other publications, where this story appeared, all featuring the L. Sprague de Camp version, the Donald M. Grant series, 1989, the Sphere Book series in a volume titled The Conan Chronicles, also published in 1989. Not to be confused with the other Conan Chronicles, the one I actually own a copy of, the two-volume collections published by Gollancz in 2000, and those that were finally for the first time offering to the reader the original text in which Robert E. Howard actually wrote the story all the way back in 1933. From the author's original words. And after that, of course, you got the Del Rey editions in 2003, etc., etc. And then, of course, you have the comic book adaptations, because, of course, Marvel did it not once but twice. The Tower of the Elephant in the 70s, they did it twice. They first put it in the fourth issue of Conan the Barbarian. I'm reading here. I don't have all this by heart. And then they did a different adaptation in issue 24 of The Savage Sword of Conan, if you're interested. Plus, last but not least, Dark Horse Comics did their own adaptation in 2003. So yeah, the early 2000s were great years for Conan. And this story in particular, was the gem that kept on giving, pun completely intentional. So wow, what a roller coaster! I hope you had as much fun listening to me as I had, talking about this story, and I hope you join me for the next one, which is going to be the Black Colossus, or feel free to navigate through the channel and find something that you might think is more fun to listen to, or not. But if you do enjoy this kind of content, don't forget to do all of the things that people do under such circumstances. And I look forward to speaking to you again. Bye.